Friends, I am Pramod Joglekar. I was serving as a professor at Deccan College, Pune for the last 35 years as a professor of bioarchaeology. I have done intensive fieldwork over past 35 years, and I thought that I would like to share my experience to everyone else who don't know what is archaeology. Basically, when we utter the word archaeology, there are many reactions that come out. Many of us do not know what archaeology is actually, and therefore we like to know what it is. It's a very fascinating field, certainly. And many times when I tell people who ask me, "What do you do?" then I say, "I'm an archaeologist." And they say, "Oh, it must be so exciting." It is exciting. Certainly, it is exciting and also fascinating field. But it is a very professional and one of the very advanced branch of knowledge, academic branch of knowledge. So that kind of academic knowledge I will like to share in this course. So this course I have designed in such a manner that we will like to get some answers of the questions that generally come to us. For example, a very common question which people ask me, how do you find archaeological sites? How do you know there is an archaeological site? And then once you know there is an archaeological site, how do you decide what to excavate? And when you excavate, what do you find? So the questions are endless and interesting questions, and the answers to those, we will learn what archaeology is. Then there are many other questions which are related, that why do you do archaeology? Because many people know there is history, some people have heard about anthropology, some people have heard about some sub-disciplines of anthropology or history as well, such as historical archaeology or medieval history or modern history. But then in archaeology, what do you do? So here in this course, I will begin with telling what archaeology is, and then emphasize from time to time, through examples of course, is that it is a study of the human past. It's a very broad definition I'm giving. Study of the human past, not of only prehistory, because that is another misconception which many people have is, oh, archaeology is only related to prehistory, of those people when we did not have any civilization and other things, but it is not so. Archaeology is an approach to look at human past from prehistoric times to modern times. With the examples which I am going to show you, you will find some examples as late as 1970s. So it is an approach, and how this approach has come up in last say 300, 400 years, that we will see. We will also see what is the relationship between archaeology, anthropology, history, and other such disciplines. Of course, while doing so, we will see what are archaeological periods, because just now I uttered a word prehistory. So we will see what is prehistory, what is protohistory, what is history, and such terminologies which are essential. But most of the time, I will use common terminologies rather than going into complicated jargon kind of things, so that everyone will know what I'm speaking. We will also have a quick glance at history of archaeology, because archaeology is a new discipline, as new as last 150 years, almost all over the world. It evolved very nicely in the last 150 years, but there is a history behind it. And we will learn about the history, how it changed, how the goals changed, why do people do archaeology today and why we were doing in the past. All such kinds of questions we will deal with. Then of course, one of the key thing is archaeological sites, or what we call in our terminology as archaeological record. It means what humans have left, where people lived, like we are living today. We are having societies, we are having cities, villages, farms, houses, buildings, foundries, and all kinds of things. But once this civilization or this culture vanishes, what is left behind becomes an archaeological past. This is what we call archaeological record. So how do we study archaeological record? From the archaeological sites. There is a lot of variety of it. We are going to see the variety of the archaeological sites. Then there are various branches of archaeology. Archaeology, as I said, is a very formal academic discipline of social science today. We will know various branches of archaeology such as prehistoric archaeology, historic archaeology, modern archaeology, or something like urban archaeology, or something called contemporary archaeology. Such kind of branches we will study with examples. Then methods of finding sites. As I mentioned in the beginning, a question is how do you find sites? There are a variety of techniques. Some are traditional, some are now modern with use of space science or aerial photography, and of course use of computer science now. So all those methods of finding sites, recording sites, and then proceeding, we will learn. Then an important part is digging the site. We have to dig a site. To do what? To reconstruct the past. Because the aim of archaeology, modern archaeology today, that we are going to learn is reconstructing the past. How was the past? How was the past environment? Who were the people? How do they live there? If they have vanished, why did they vanish? Was there any change in the environment? Was there any change in the economic strategies? Was there any change in their internal social structures? What led to the vanishing of these societies or cultures? So all this is learned through digging, because digging is the primary activity done in archaeological site. So we are going to see some digging exercises through video clips of the sites and how they are dug. What are the methods of recording? What happens on an archaeological site? What happens on an archaeological camp? Because this is something, a part of archaeological activity. Then science in archaeology has emerged in the last, say, 50, 60 years. And so much the science has come in archaeology that in many places it has become almost a science. Still in many countries like India, it is considered as a part of social science. That's why I uttered the word social science, because in our university curricula, it is a part of social science department. But in many countries, European countries, it is considered as archaeological science department, because it is thought that it is almost a science. So we will learn about the physical sciences and biological sciences who have contributed to the growth of archaeological science or science in archaeology. Then a special section I have introduced is what I am calling it pseudo-archaeology. Many of us have heard the word pseudo. Pseudo means false. A lot of archaeology, unfortunately, learned by common people or lay people is through pseudo-archaeology. Why I am saying unfortunately is because this is what it comes to us very quickly and easily through films, through news now, very funny news which come of something has been found from such and such site and which is dating to 1 million years and it has come from Mars and all such kind of very fascinating because they are really fascinating when we look at the news. And the anchors sound also, and the anchors shouting at us and telling, no, look, this is what it is. This is what somebody has hidden from you. There were a lot of discoveries in the past, but people have hidden from you. So there are many conspiracy theories. And so all such things, how do we differentiate good archaeology or mainstream archaeology from this is false archaeology or what is called pseudo-archaeology? There are various names to it. There are many examples. Why we call it pseudo, this I am going to also tell why we are saying such and such thing is pseudo-archaeology and why we are saying such and such thing is legitimate or authentic archaeology. So in all, this is a overall spectrum of archaeological studies or archaeological fundamentals that we are going to learn through, say, 10 lectures. And of course, at the end we will have a lot of questions, because everywhere I go and talk to non-archaeologists, there are more questions than the talk that I give. But this is always welcome, because through questions we will know answers to certain things which I might have skipped while discussing the things, or some more examples which I can quote or give visuals. So in a way we will have this kind of fundamentals of archaeology learned through authentic visuals, authentic clips, and based on my past experience of so many years in the field, not only from prehistoric, but from prehistoric to modern archaeology. I have myself excavated several sites and participated in more than 100 excavations in the country, in India as well as outside. So all this I will put together and let you know what authentic archaeology is. Now, just now I mentioned that what is archaeology, and we are going to learn fundamental parts of archaeology. But one of the questions which always remains with all of us is that why do you study archaeology? And this question needs to be explained before we proceed further. See, human beings are very curious. One of the very interesting part of humanity itself, or becoming human itself, is becoming curious about ourselves. Because many other animals who live like us are not curious about themselves, but we are very curious about us. And not only that, as humans, we are always curious to know what happened in the past. See, this is something very exclusive to our human brain, that we know about past. Many animals don't know about past, maybe immediate past, that they're walking here and there, and they were here 1 minute ago. But beyond that, their memory doesn't survive, and they're not interested in knowing. Say, for example, a dog doesn't want to know what he was doing or she was doing 1 year ago. But human beings, we are interested in. Not only that, we are always interested in knowing what is the future, what we are going to do as human beings, say after 100 years. This makes us different, and therefore, this curiosity about the past has led to archaeology. Now, this began about, say, 500 years ago. We will look at it when we look at history of archaeology. But this curiosity emerged of knowing who were these people. And therefore, one of the very interesting questions is who we are. We, in a sense, who we human beings are. When did we become human? Because there were non-human animals from which we became human. So, when did we become human? And while becoming humans, how did we change? How our culture emerged from beginning phase of, say, hunting, gathering and collecting food, to a stage where we started producing food, we started creating structures, we started settling in the villages, creating superstructures such as religion, power, and all such, or schooling, that means educational systems. How did we do it? How we started from there and came here? This is one of the questions where we are very curious about, and archaeology likes to answer this. This is rather within the scope of archaeology, that we are very curious about who we were, what we were earlier. We changed, if we changed, how we changed, why we changed, and all such questions. Because in modern archaeology today, we are not just happy in digging the sites, but we are interested in explaining or giving explanations to what happened in the past. So we are going to learn this and that. Then, as I said in the beginning, history, anthropology and other disciplines are all integrated together. So we are going to learn about it. We are going to learn about modern science techniques. But the essential question is why we want to know this. Because every one of us has an identity. Identity as a national, maybe identity as a social group. If there is a tribal society, identity as a tribal society. But all such identities with which we live, we want to find out how long this identity is there. How long this national identity has been there. What was my nation and how did it emerge? So archaeology will like to throw light on that. Of course, through study of the past after digging, which means we rely on material remains. Now, another viewpoint which I will like to clear it here is that what is the difference between other sources of the past, such as, say, history, which are documented sources, and archaeology. History and archaeology are connected to each other. They are complementing to each other, but there is a fundamental difference that archaeology entirely relies on material remains of what happened, what are the actual remains that we find, rather than knowing through if somebody has said something. If some king or somebody has got a poet to compose something for him, and this survives to us, and on that we decide how the king acted. This is not accepted in archaeology. We will only find out if any remains of that king are existing in the ground and we excavate it. This is the fundamental difference between other sources and archaeological sources. So naturally, since the sources are different, the techniques of digging, techniques of processing in the laboratory, techniques of interpreting those, and then finally arriving at conclusions are different. So all those instrumentations involved in it, we are going to learn. Another common question which is generally asked is, how do you know certain thing is so much old? You say, oh, it is of 2000 BCE. How are you sure by saying so? It is because in archaeology there are many techniques of putting a chronometric frame, or rather what we call dating. This is not to be confused with the dating which is used in common language. Archaeological dating, where we try to fix what was the period of occupation of a site, when this thing happened, when this episode happened. For example, if there is a battle, when the battle occurred. So we precisely like to put things in a frame of time, and this is what we call archaeological dating. And there are a variety of techniques, methods, which we are going to see utility of these techniques and how these techniques differ from each other. And of course, as it's a science, as I said, it is never precise. So when we look at this dating or any other interpretation, how far the interpretation is secure, we are going to also learn about that part. As I said in the beginning, we are curious about our ancestors. Our ancestors, like we live, they also lived. They had certain culture, they had certain social formations, social structures, economic activities. They lived, they ate, they used certain sort of clothes. In other words, like we are, they were there. They also had belief systems. But not only that, they took decisions. And nowadays, in modern archaeology, there is a branch of archaeology called cognitive archaeology, which is emerging in the last, say, 50 years, where archaeologists are interested in not just knowing what was the material that they left behind, but to go towards how did they take certain decisions. And if they have taken certain decisions, what thought process must have gone in their mind? What were their choices? And why they have selected a certain choice and not selected some other choice. So cognitive archaeology is something which is emerging, which is ultimately showing how we are curious about our past. Now, after giving this brief introduction to the outline of the course, now in this part, we'll continue and see what actually archaeology is and how it is related to our past as a branch of knowledge. What are its aims and scopes? Because the aims and scopes have not remained static. As I said, there is a history of about 500 years. So the aims and scopes have changed, and we will see what is the scope and aims today and what was in the past. Then also, I have said about history, anthropology as, say, sister disciplines or complementary disciplines, but we will know the relationship between all of these, including linguistics, which is study of languages, and also know how archaeology is multidisciplinary. Archaeology is not a very one simple strand of branch of knowledge. It is extremely multidisciplinary. We require to take help from many disciplines. We also require to give outputs to other disciplines. And this kind of interaction between various social sciences and natural sciences and mathematical sciences has led to this modern nature of multidisciplinary type in archaeology, which we are going to see in this part. As I began with, a common question is, when you do archaeology, it must be fascinating. I'll come to that first. It is fascinating because a very old perception of the archaeology is that our past was very glorious. This is a kind of a romantic perception actually, which came after Renaissance in Europe, that they thought that we are today degraded, but past was very glorious. And now we are facing such and such problems, but past was very good. Our ancestors must be very prosperous and they must be very educated, they must be very cultured. So let us know the past. So this concept of glorious past, which is quite romantic, is one perception of archaeology. And this is still there with us. It has not completely gone from modern archaeology, of understanding the past as a glorious period. And therefore people use the word great period, golden age, and such words are used. But archaeology is not just related to that. Archaeology is related to not just glorious past, but all kinds of past. There are some parts in our history or historical past which are not that glorious or which are not at all glorious. They are called dark periods or dark portions of our history. Archaeology covers that also. But the perception of archaeology as a glorious one or related to glorious past is because we see majestic archaeological monuments. Commonly, archaeology people relate to monuments, temples, huge temples, churches, mosques, synagogues, and many other places. And through this, we think this is archaeology. But as I said, past is not always glorious. There are some places which are called dark heritage places, such as places where slaves were kept, where violence occurred, where battles occurred, where people were interned in the camps and exterminated, like we have heard about Second World War extermination camps. This is a quite dark heritage part, but it also gives material remains to us. An archaeological approach goes and tries to reconstruct that dark heritage part also, which we are of course going to see in the course. In India, when somebody says archaeology, immediately the next question comes is Harappa or Mohenjo-daro, because a misconception has emerged over the last couple of years, say couple of decades in India at least, that archaeology starts with Harappans or archaeology starts with Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. Now, this is not just common people's perception. Even learned people, even great historians, and many social scientists, they also consider that there was nothing behind Harappans. So they think all India became India in a Harappan time only. But this is not true. There is also very mystical and very hazy perception about the past. Why it is mystical? It is because it is past. It is hundreds years, 1,000 years, maybe 20,000, 50,000, 1 billion. Now once we go back to such period, things become far distant from our perception and therefore it becomes mystical. Also it is related to treasures. Many times archaeology is equated with treasures because again the idea is that people were very wealthy and they had a lot of gold and they must have buried the gold and let us find the gold. So this mystical or hazy perception also comes because of treasures. There is a lot of role of films, novels and pseudo-archaeology. I talked about a couple of minutes ago. There are many films which are based on archaeology. Of course, there are films, but when we see a film, it is as good as a reality to us. And many novels are there which are based on archaeology. They are very popular. They are bestsellers. Millions of copies are sold. Worldwide viewers are there for the films. For example, Indiana Jones films or novels which are based on Harappans or such things, which deliberately provide us a hazy picture or a mystical picture or something related to mythology, and therefore our perception of archaeology also becomes very hazy. Also, as I said, while talking about pseudo-archaeology, conspiracy theories are there, such as there were aliens from the past and there are signatures of these past aliens coming, and then let us know from archaeology. So archaeology is equated in the public perception to such kind of very fascinating things. Also, there is a part of the perception because something which is distant and may not be related to us. So it must be something crazy in the past. So there are very weird ideas about there were giants and there were such kind of races which could travel in the air or all such kind of things. So those ideas of crazy nature also get people to archaeology. Of course, it is not true. And once we learn what authentic archaeology is, we know that these ideas cannot be sustained through the actual evidence. Of course, there is one other side from archaeology side is there is a poor communication from archaeologist's side of very authentic archaeology taken to the masses. And therefore, what comes through novels or what comes through films becomes the idea of archaeology. Media are also misled to people because there are a lot of exaggerations. So, for example, when certain skeletons are found, which I also experienced myself firsthand, certain skeletons are found, then the media people try to exaggerate it, saying that, oh, this must have been 10 feet tall people, or these must have been giants, and this must have been something like this. So these exaggerations are also creating misconceptions and wrong perceptions. Sometimes media do underestimation. For example, when an excavation is going on, certain things are found. Media wants to know what is great in this. I had faced such questions quite a lot. When we excavate, say for example, 3 months, every day we dig, every day we record, keep records, go on photographing things, keep the artifact materials into camps and take it to laboratory later. But when the media people come, or say TV people come and want to know, what did you find today? And how it is interesting and how it is going to change the history of India. Now, this doesn't happen. Archaeological excavations are quite systematic, they're very professional, and every day there is no earth-shattering discovery done. But media people want to know, and therefore once they are not interested in such matters, then they leave their attention from the archaeological site, and then the site which is in prominence now goes into dark. All these kinds of perceptions are there, and therefore I thought that we should talk about authentic archaeology. Now we'll begin with the first part, that is, what is archaeology? Here we will first look at origin of the term archaeology formally. Now it was used by a person called Jacob Spoon in the 17th century. His period is 1647 to 1685. He was a French doctor. Now one thing, when we are going to see history of archaeology later also, I will like to emphasize here is that people in the past were not just one. That means a doctor was not just doctor. A doctor was also collector of antiquities. There were travelers. They were curious people, and therefore they did a lot of activities, many of them. This French doctor, Jacob Spoon, was born in France, in Lyon, and he did medical practice, very flourishing practice. He was a very wealthy doctor. But he studied local historical monuments also as a hobby. Coins and other artifacts he collected and he studied. He published the first document in 1673 of the antiquities from the Lyon. The document is in French. He traveled to Greece, he traveled to Italy, he traveled to Turkey, which was earlier called Levant. He collected and published descriptions of antiquities, and he wrote first Greek description of heritage to the Europeans. Before that, we did not know how Greek heritage was. Then he wrote a book in 1685, and here for the first time he used the term Archaeologia. This term is in French and Greek, taken from Greek. So this Archaeologia, there is a one part called Archaeos, which means old, and there is another part which is called Logos, meaning knowledge. So knowledge of the old. That is the original beginning of the word archaeology. Today this word is used to a very large branch of knowledge, what we call dealing with the past, not just old. We are not just talking about old. And this is how the term archaeology emerged, and we use the term today. We just saw the definition of archaeology. Now we will see what is the scope of archaeology. The aims and scopes have changed over the last 4 or 5 centuries. They have not remained static. Any branch of knowledge, it happens that the scope goes on changing. 2 centuries ago, just 2 centuries ago, it was not a very respectable profession. Archaeologists were not considered quite respectable even in European society. And therefore it was not very legitimate branch of knowledge. It was considered as a side hobby, as I said, of doctors, authors, painters, artists, musicians, politicians a lot. We are going to see a lot of politicians have contributed, like the American President Thomas Jefferson. So many people did also archaeology. So that was the perception that archaeology is also, he did archaeology. And therefore it was not a very respectable profession, not at all. It was a hobby. Today is a very systematic approach of studying the human past. It is concerned with identification today, interpretation of the physical remains left by past human societies. It studies humans in their environment from prehistoric past, as I said in the very beginning. When I say prehistoric past, it means period of human history before writing was known, to as recent past as 50 years ago. Then artifacts and ecofacts are the basic things which are used in archaeology. Artifacts, the word used for artifact means human made objects. All such objects which are natural objects but humans have modified them, we call it artifacts. Ecofacts are those natural objects, organic and inorganic both, which are associated with human beings in the past. They occupy, ecofacts and artifacts occupy central position as a material evidence and always supported by theory. Artifacts themselves have no meaning. When they are supported by theory, then only they become meaningful. Now, modern archaeology demands not just justification, but the explanation of the material remains. We are bound to see objects, we are bound to see structures, we are bound to see remains of past environment in the archaeological site. But we are not just interested in modern archaeology today of describing them. What structure was found, where it was found, how it was. We are not just interested in that. We want to know why this structure was there, what was the function of this structure, why did it was created in the first place, and if it is destroyed, why it got destroyed. So explanation. Explanation is a very key word in modern archaeology today. In a nutshell, when we say what archaeology is doing, it studies past humans, of course. Human means physically human beings as humans. Origin and decay of cultures, because cultures originate, they decay after a certain period of time. So this origin and decay, naturally the processes behind it and their explanations. Transmission of cultural traits across generations. Now this is something unique to humans. As I've said, humans have unique idea about the past. Similarly, transmission of cultural traits across generation is only unique to humans. No other animal gives such kind of transmission to next generations through culture. Now when I say word use culture, here it means language, customs, beliefs, and all such natural ways of looking at the things around us, which we learn it from our parents, they have learned from their parents. So how this is the way cultural transmission occurs. So sometimes it is called extrasomatic adaptation in evolutionary terms. It is extrasomatic because it is not part of our body, but it is outside body, but it is an adaptive mechanism through which we learn and try to adapt like evolutionary processes happen. Then also we learn about past environment, all the features. When I say environment, physical environment, biological environment, natural environment, also internal environment, that means within our body. Then we look at subsistence strategies, food, subsistence, livelihood, fuels, cooking methods, fishing methods, hunting methods, all those which are connected with the word subsistence strategies. Social and religious practices, because religion, maybe a primitive religion to very organized religion, is also a unique part of human culture. So all those things related to social structures, religious processes, religious patterns, archaeology is concerned with that. This is within the scope of archaeology. At the root of all this is cultural processes, their causes and their effects. Because we look at the past culture not as a static one, not fixed at a particular time point, but spread over a period of time. That means it has some causes because of which it emerges, it has some effects because of which it may die or it may continue. So this is what is the scope of archaeology. There is a definition, formal definition of a culture, and what is used today includes Edward Taylor's definition, who was an anthropologist, includes that a culture includes knowledge, beliefs, arts, morals, laws, customs, and any other capabilities and habits that are acquired by humans as members of the society. This definition actually makes the scope of archaeology very clear that all that we have learned as social beings is a part of culture, and all that is part of archaeological research. Now, I just now talked about artifacts and ecofacts. So let us see how big is the spectrum of artifacts. It is very vast, and over a course of time I'm going to show you certain artifacts which I'm just saying it. But saying it because when we look at the artifacts themselves, then you can recall that, oh, this is this object. They are objects, and as I said, they are man-made objects, or say humans have modified the objects. Tools is a very old, perhaps the oldest of the artifacts are tools and weapons, of course, which were made of stone, which were made of bone, which were made of metal, wood also, but wood doesn't survive. Wood artifacts generally don't survive, but they were made of wood also. Utility objects such as ceramics, pottery, metal containers, cooking vessels, all those are utility objects. Hunting equipments such as snares for trapping hare or trapping small game, nets used for fishing, net sinkers. Perhaps many of us don't know about what are net sinkers. When nets are put in water for fishing, they should be underwater, and then they can be lifted up. So we require to have a certain weight attached to the net. These are called net sinkers, and we find a lot of them in archaeology. Ornaments such as beads, bangles, pendants, amulets, anklets, and many other things. Then we have household objects such as personal objects, clothes, footwears, other things, kitchen equipment, kitchen objects, and so on and so forth. We have animal husbandry related objects such as harnesses, such as ropes for tying animals, such as things kept for their drinking, for drinking water for the animals. So animal husbandry related objects. Weapons of offense for warring with each other. Now this is also one of the faculty of human brain of warring with each other. Violence is part of human activities. So people have clashed with each other in the past, and we are going to see some part of it in conflict archaeology when we look at that. Weapons. Construction material for building houses such as stones, bones, bricks, nails, sometimes many other wooden objects. So all this construction material is also artifact. Carts, chariots, boats, parts of boats, anchors for anchoring or mooring the boats, toys, games, paintings, art objects, ritual objects for offering to the gods or whatever ritual, whatever belief we have, coins at a little later stage of society, but coins, burial goods, and offerings. Because offering to the dead is very old custom, and offering some certain goods has been there from the past. We are going to see such examples when we actually look at some sites. Now we look at ecofacts. Ecofacts are bones, humans as well as animals, teeth, humans as well as animals, otoliths. This is some specialized kind of ecofact which we are not going to study more, so I am explaining it here itself. Otoliths, the word is auto and the lith. Lith means stone. These are the stones which are in our ear. In our human ear also are there. There are 3 on the left side, 3 on the right side. And their function is to put a balance mechanism, or rather a mechanism for sensing our balance, physical balance. So relative position of these 3 stones on left and right tells that we are walking erect or we are fallen. Now these are liths, that means stones, so they survive in archaeological record, and many of them are found in archaeological sites. Therefore they are important as source material or ecofact. Then we have shells such as molluscan shells, gastropod shells, Many of us have seen on seashore, and we, as a child, we have collected, many of us have collected those. Then there are micromolecular remains. Like our bodies are made of molecules, biomolecules. So they are not visible to eye, but they remain in the archaeological record. Wood, very common, we know what is wood. Charcoal, also we use charcoal. Phytolith, like I said, otoliths. Phytoliths are also liths, they are the stones. And these are the very peculiar shaped bodies, stone bodies, microscopic, which are found in all plants. All plants have these microscopic bodies, and they are very peculiar shapes. Some of them are so interesting shapes. But the importance is, because they are stones, they survive in the archaeological record. And from that we can go to the environment, we can go to the what kind of plant it was used, etc. Then we have seeds, nuts, grains, mummies. Now, one of the fascinating part of archaeology is mummies, and also shown in films. These are also ecofacts. Then we have bog bodies. We do not have bog bodies in hot continents like subcontinent like India, but in European countries where there is cold, and if the body gets buried very fast without any oxygen, then most of the body survives. This typically happens in coal mines where high coal is there, less oxygen is there. So bodies get preserved almost as entirely as they are, and these are called bog bodies. These are also ecofacts. Then very interesting and very different kind of ecofact is what we call foot impressions or pug marks. Now this branch of knowledge which studies it's called ichnology, which studies the footprints. This is typically used in wildlife management studies, where just by looking at the footprint of, say, a tiger, we like to know which tiger it is, what is the size of the tiger, whether it's a male or a female. That science has developed a lot. So in archaeology also we have such examples, very few. There is only one published example in India, but there are many such examples of footprints. All these together form what we call ecofacts. While we were discussing about the scope and definition of archaeology, I spoke that archaeology is multidisciplinary, where many disciplines of many different sciences and branches of knowledge are utilized for interpreting the past. Here we are seeing various social sciences, physical sciences, and abstract sciences and their role in archaeology. When we say social sciences, history is one of them. Then we have anthropology, we have linguistics, where it is a study of past languages. Sociology is also heavily utilized, particularly the various theories of society. Psychology has also come in picture, particularly neuropsychology, especially with understanding the cognitive aspect of human behavior. Then in physical sciences, geology is the oldest one, because most of the environmental determinants, they come from geology. Biology and various sub-branches, chemistry, physics, and now in the last, say, 50 years or so, space science has also started contributing to understanding of archaeological record. In the abstract sciences, logic is the basic one, basic to all sciences. We have mathematics, statistics, computing, and now artificial intelligence also being utilized in archaeology, especially the mathematical sciences and statistical sciences, or mathematics and statistics together. Their role has emerged in the last few decades. It does not go beyond, say, 40, 50 years. Now we study the relations between different disciplines and archaeology. Archaeology and history is the first to start. Both study the past. The difference is the source of evidence that is used. For example, it is a written evidence in history, whereas it is a material evidence in archaeology. History limits to textual evidence, whereas archaeology incorporates even textual evidence as necessary supporting evidence. But primary evidence in archaeology is material evidence. Archaeology helps history to know facts that are not recorded in form of ancient document. Now this is an important point, because Most of the historical document, let it be court records, let it be inscriptions, let it be legends on the coins, or any such documentary proofs which are available to us about historical past, are mainly related to elite in society. Those who have some role to play in the society at that particular time, such as, say, priests, kings, queens, or feudal lords, or artisans, or somebody who has some position in society. Whereas in archaeology, we deal with all kinds of people, including common people, which are known as subaltern in some other fields like sociology and history, or what is called marginalized people or oppressed people. So archaeology deals with common people. That means the remains of everybody are examined, and this is what is unique for archaeology, that archaeology gives us a unbiased picture of the entire society at that time without worrying what was the position of the person at that time or what was the position of that house or whatever was there at that time. Archaeology is not a branch of history. Now today. Earlier it was a branch of history, but now today archaeology is not considered as a branch of history itself. It is an independent branch in itself. We now discuss about archaeology and anthropology. Anthropology and archaeology both study humans, both study human behaviors. But our anthropology is more comprehensive study of the humans from biological, social and cultural perspectives. Initially, archaeology was thought to be a subdiscipline of anthropology. Even today in the United States, it is a part of anthropology. There is no separate archaeology department. All archaeology is done in anthropology because they think it that way. But now it is a separate discipline almost all over the world. Archaeology and anthropology are complementary to each other, as both study humans, human evolution from biological as well as cultural point of view. Both aim to study races in the past, but now the idea of races as such is out of date. It has been expelled from both the disciplines. A little bit about archaeology and linguistics. Linguistics is a study of the use of languages, how people use languages, both today and past. So there is a branch of linguistics which is called historical linguistics, which examines past languages, their usage, the patterns of change, and therefore the inputs from this branch of historical linguistics are helpful to archaeology as supporting evidence for particularly understanding the material spread and the vocabulary spread. Some work has been done, initiated. Again, this branch is not very old. Historical linguistics use in archaeology is not very old. But some work has been done so far. And there are some examples such as the vocabulary related to rice cultivation spread and rice itself in Austroasiatic languages in India and Dravidian languages in India. Also, there has been some work on the spread of lions from Africa to rest of the world, and then movement of the vocabulary related to lion from Swahili languages. But the examples are few because this branch is new. It's an emerging field. However, some misuse of this historical linguistics in archaeology has also been observed. There is a very specific reason to this. Not understanding the limits of both the branches. An important thing is to understand is archaeology cannot tell what people spoke in the past. And linguistics cannot assign any language to the past cultures. It is because the nature of evidence themselves limit to crossing this. And if this is crossed, then what happens is, by using the example of archaeology or using some evidence from archaeology, people start talking about that Harappans spoke this and this language. Some say they spoke Sanskrit, some say they spoke Dravidian language, some say no, they spoke some language from Balochistan. It happens is because, actually speaking, archaeology can never tell what language was spoken. And linguistics, which studies language pattern change in the past, cannot particularly say this people or these people from this culture spoke this language. Now to sum up, let us see what we have already discussed quickly. What is archaeology? Is reconstructing the past. Archaeology involves study of humans in prehistoric time to the historic time or even the recent past. Archaeology studies past humans and their life through study of material remains and the behavior from that on the background of the past environment. Archaeology is discovering, recovering, analyzing, and interpreting the material. Maybe it is actual material or proxy evidence of humans and their environment in the past. Archaeology deals with explanation. As I said before, it is not just digging, but explanation of past human behavior. It is multidisciplinary, but independent and a composite branch of knowledge, which is different than history and anthropology, which has its own standing.